And that actually segues right into my next topic is faith. You mentioned faith, and I know that's something that's your sub niche, your subspecialty. What would you say as far as faith goes? You've already mentioned, Stephanie, at the beginning, the biblical traditional type marriage. What would you say have been some of the biggest challenges? That's one that you've already noted, or that you even seen your clients that stem from their faith for neurodiverse couples.
On the one hand, it's like faith, and I'm actually going to change it to religion for a moment.
Okay.
Religion and religious beliefs can be a two-edged sword. Usually, as Dr. Tony wrote in the foreword of our book, it was probably a similar interest that drew us together as a neurodiverse faith-based couple, specifically of maybe a denomination or a faith belief system. We shared that in common, which is, why we got together. But sometimes where it can be tricky is if the neurodivergent partner has taken like a belief or a faith thing and turned it into such a rule and a role that it can get turned into abuse really quickly, taking a verse out of context, cherry picking. And that can come from any religion, not just Christianity, just kind of taking one thing that this text says about a woman or a man or a relationship and then building your whole like marriage theology around it. That can be really problematic in some of our couples. And it can be problematic whether it's the woman who's on the spectrum and like she believes she can't leave an abusive situation because it's not an affair. And she's stuck in a really black and white, well, this is not adultery, so I just have to suffer for the sake of my religion to keep this marriage. So sometimes a neurodivergent woman is stuck, in those things. And then if it's a neurodivergent man who believes that being the head of the house is more of a patriarchal, authoritarian, it's my way or the highway thing, and you're stuck on it's only my perspective. The one way there's a faith out there or a belief called complementarianism. So what that's supposed to mean is that you complement each other with each other's gifts and skill sets in the marriage. But this autistic man I was working with who came from more an authoritarian background, I was like, well, talk to me about what you think a complementarian means. He's like, well, it's like I'm 51% and she's 49%. So if we disagree, like I make the decision because I've got the extra percentage points. But as he kept
extra stock in the company.
As he kept talking, he's like, so I really don't need her 49% because in the scheme of things, I'm going to do what I want because I'm the head of the house. And so like just what Dan just said, like that 49% of her perspective, even according to his own thing, like I don't need it. I don't need to seek it out. I don't need to find out about this because I've decided we're not going to spend the money on that. I've decided it's not important and I'm the head of the house. So you have no voice. And that's where it can get really extreme. And so in our book, we talk a little bit about that. We talk about some of the verses that are kind of clobber verses that can get turned into abuse. And then sometimes in some situations, the religious organization or system is supporting that. And that makes it an even more difficult situation for a neurodiverse faith-based couple.
Yeah, I think that what you just said about the 51-49% kind of speaks back to what Dan, you said, is if my religion and my belief, my value system is that I'm the final authority on a decision, and like this man that you worked with is saying, so why listen to my partner? What you were saying, Dan, is because my partner has a perspective that I don't have at all. And so as the person making those, who as a family, we've decided I'm going to make the decisions. It's now my responsibility to listen to my partner. If I don't, then I'm really missing a huge chunk of information and data in order to make my decision. So as a neurodiverse Christian couple, for you personally, what have been some of the bigger challenges and what solutions have you found that have helped you in your marriage?
I'll go back to the perspective conversation, accepting that there's maybe, I'll be extreme again about it again, that the King James is not the only definition of the particular verse, right? There is a more than literal, that 7-word or however many verses, there's context going on there just as much as you wouldn't read a book or assess the situation or anything else without considering what else is going on in your everyday, you should also apply that same activity to what you're reading. So if you read it and you don't consider contextually who the writer is, when the writer is, who's the audience of that particular thing, then your chances of misinterpreting are much higher than otherwise. So that's probably, from a perspective, something that has been valuable, because I hadn't always considered it that way. The English words were the ridiculously the other word, the real words, and not given consideration to the original text or even the original context. That's probably the biggest thing, using that perspective idea to biblical interpretation. And in that regard, one thing we haven't really talked about a lot is this seems to sound ridiculous too, is talking about the value of people, which in a Christian context should be automatic, but mentally it isn't always automatic. It is, well, I've got a perspective, let's run with it. And if the people aspect, let's forget the logical aspect of it, the people, just the humanity of it is missed. And there's a lot of humanity in scripture that is easy to miss because it is so far away in both time and geography from, well, at least here in the US. And it is words on a page, not, walking through the mall, seeing actual people, kind of an idea, right? It's easy to disconnect all of that. It's easy to disconnect the humanity, the feelings, let's take a highly emotional situation, the lady caught in adultery or the woman at the well. Both of those were highly emotional situations. But from a plain reading, if you're just reading it through to get the story, it's very easy to lose the humanity in all that. What was really going on at a human level? That takes a separate reading, takes more than one reading, and being able to do that on purpose. Okay, I'm going to consider the details in this read. I'm going to consider the humanity in this read. Is just a completely different way to read than I'm going to read for information. And that's probably a learning that, I've consumed later. I mean, reading the book of John if you just read the book of John, I think it's one of the easier ones to do this with, just for the relational aspects of what's going on. Who are the players? What do they know? Who do they know? That kind of thing. If you read it for that particular reason, only from a relational perspective, and make the facts be secondary, you'll come away with a humanity of that activity. You'll learn to read between the statements of, they were in this city, they went to this city. And if you do the math on how far those cities were apart from walking, you realize that they didn't just quit talking about this and start talking about that. There was a long time between that to where they were on the road goofing off or doing whatever it was they were doing, that added to the value of who they were in those moments. And so the starkness of Jesus said X or John said Y or whatever it is has a lot of background to it. There is a lot of humanity in that isn't necessarily written down, but is just as valuable, at least as valuable, right? To understand that this statement didn't come out of the void, right? And it's, you can take that same idea, apply it to, to your everyday as well. What all is going on around me, what all happened 20 minutes before, all of that kind of stuff. And if you consider that contextually, just as much as you should read the Bible that way, read the situation that way.
Which kind of speaks to the whole thing that can happen, right, with an autistic brain and perspective. And sometimes ADHD is missing the social context, missing the social cues, missing the relational. What's not being said is also important as what's being said. And so I think that's what can be really difficult with some of the couples that we work with, is when one person is set on, this is what the words literally say. And I know I can go back to the ancient Hebrew or Greek and I can prove to you, versus like, okay, but what was happening relationally in that situation? So we'll have a lot of people who are very knowledgeable, better in theology and ancient languages and ancient maps than we are, but they cannot apply the principle of love your neighbor more than yourself, or how to be kind even when you disagree. Like a big concept in Christianity is the fruits of the spirit: love, joy, kindness, patience. Okay, let's just say we're going to focus on those 8 or 9 things. Forget about what you think these other things mean. Like, what if you were just loving, kind, patient, long-suffering, building joy in your relationship? Let's just start with some basics that we should have learned like in Sunday school. That's way more important than you knowing the ancient Greek and what biblical map and geography that I don't know, because sometimes they want to argue with me on that. And I'm like, no, what? We're back to kindness. Let's just go back to kindness. We're going to be kind.
I don't know. And I know what I don't know. So let's get back to just being nice.
Yes.
Yeah. So how are, yes, and yes. And how have you two seen your relationship evolve as you've started to understand these concepts more and more?
So I don't want to use the word deconstruct because that's got a very negative connotation. I think what we have done is reconstruct. As a couple, we began to look at like, what were things that were taught that's probably just some preacher's personal opinion. What does actually the text say? How did we come to the beliefs that we hold? Like, why did we believe that so strongly? Because there were times in the marriage I was doing things to, quote, submit to Dan when he was not even asking me to do that. But I was following the script of what I've been told. So if you have a need or whatever, and he doesn't pick up on it, then you just have to swallow it and move forward. And then that was causing resentment. It's like, I never told you you couldn't do that, or you couldn't go there. So there was like a lot of like unconscious things at play that just over the past couple of years, we've made our spiritual life more relational versus like he's going off and reading something and I'm going off and reading something. We're both doing our Christian lifestyle thing. But like, how are we doing that relationally and together, unwinding beliefs? Why do we believe what we believe? Is that actually accurate to the scripture? Being open to learn and hear each other's perspectives. Maybe he heard something on a podcast and he wants to share that with me, and we can discuss it. We can come away with 2 different points of view, but the sharing of it, and again, no one's right. And some things we don't know. What is the context? We're guessing sometimes on some of the context. So I think that's really where we've learned and grown, instead of being like 2 silo Christians living their life with some unconscious beliefs. Like, let's look at those, the why behind it. Like, what serves us and our system, what's still biblical, right? We still believe you, man and woman, are married together. We don't bring in extra people. Like, that's still really important to us. There's a lot of other stuff about how we run our house that really isn't dictated by that. And so that's what changed things for us. I would say the last 5 years is when we really started doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like you mentioned, you said reconstruct. And honestly, part of reconstruction is taking some pieces apart, taking them apart, but then rebuilding them and making them stronger. And so I actually like that analogy. Okay. So one thing I also wanted to ask you then is, we're talking about neurodiverse relationships and how to make them work. From your perspective as coaches, what would you say are some of the things, because a lot of neurodiverse relationships really don't work. And what are some of the ingredients, if you will, of a relationship that's really spiraling and not likely to survive? We've talked about what makes things work. Let's look at what are some of those deal breaker types of dynamics or elements that really, really create a barrier to people.
I know what I'm going to say is my number one. So I'm going to let you go, because if you say my same one, then I'll shift. So what's your kind of like number one thing that you see?
Oh, wow. Really the opposite of everything we've said. Maybe the first one that comes to mind is just being antagonistic. Everything is true or false. It is missing the forest for the trees, right? It's still common for me to miss the goal of the conversation because of word usage.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not the goal until, right, I'd have to figure out what the right word was or correct the grammar or whatever that thing was. And right, if that's the only thing you ever do, if I can't let go of
definition 2 of the dictionary,
that specific small point in this interaction, we're never getting anywhere. And for me, it is, all right, that is absolutely unimportant right now. I can probably discern what's going on. And if I can't, instead of saying you use the wrong word, I could rephrase to, is this what you're trying to say? And if, at a basic everyday communication level where all of us live 90+% of our life, that level of genial interaction is critical. When nothing's ever going to get done, even the simplest of activities is going to be incredibly hard. And you can't build a stronger connection or go into any level of communication deeper than, will you get milk on your way home? If you can't get milk on your way home without it turning into a mess. And, as long as you're actively fighting, as long as getting milk is hard communicationally, you're never getting anywhere. It is letting go of the things that prevent getting milk from getting hard.
And so you're saying the spotlight is in the wrong spot sometimes.
Right. It's
on the details that don't matter versus the actual goal.
Correct. There's a time, like editing a book, to where being excruciatingly critical is necessary. The vast majority of, and I'm good at that, but the vast majority of life doesn't need that. The wrong tense of, can you get book, can you get milk, or whatever on the way home doesn't need that level of scrutiny. It is, I've got a need, there might be something going on and I can't type all the letters right now. Maybe I'm one-handed because I've got a cup of coffee in my hand. That is unknown. But the general idea is, we don't have any milk and would you bring some home from work? That's all we really, let's get to that. And if you can't, it makes everything else so much harder.
Okay. Thank you for that perspective. Stephanie, did he take yours?
No, I thought he was going to say curiosity though. But maybe the opposite of being argumentative is being curious versus.
Well, she asked what makes things hard, not what makes things easy.
Oh, okay. So I'll give mine as, I think, and I've stopped taking people on that I think are unteachable. My new phrase is, if you're unteachable, you're unreachable. And it can be either person. I'll pick on the neurotypical spouse first. If your concept is, we are going to skill this person up to neurotypical skills, or I am right because I am neurotypical and you are wrong because you are neurodivergent, or you go off and you go do your therapy and counseling time when you're all fixed, then we'll do a couple stuff and you're not willing. If the neurotypical is putting all of the problems on neurodiversity, that's not a teachable situation. And I'm usually, I have to tap out. Like I can't, because I'm a mom too. So when I'm hearing you say those things, I'm hearing you say that about my daughter. So I'm not going to be able to hear
all of that. Yeah.
The world is terrible because of neurodivergent people.
Yes.
So that can be like the unteachable and neurotypical. If you feel like your marriage can't be good unless it's a neurotypical style relationship, you need to check yourself a little bit for ableism. Because you can have a uniquely us relationship. We've got to build what's unique to us and works for us within our belief systems, all of that, and our family system that may look completely different from you because it's unique to us. And we're going to, our goal is to help you find uniquely you. For the autistic person, if they come and they're unteachable and that they don't want to understand her emotion, the other person's emotions, they don't want to, like, reason and logic is always better than emotion. And I don't want to do the relational thing. I don't want to. This relationship works for me. The problem is her. She's just emotional. She's just too needy. She's just too sensitive. We could just go back to the way we were, where we didn't talk about the autism. We didn't talk about needs and just let life go. Like, that's an unteachable person to me too. So the counterpart then is just being teachable, willing to make mistakes and that's the grace part in the title. You've got to gracefully go through the maze together. Because if I'm trying to coach a man on doing something different for his wife and he makes a mistake the first time and she jumps on him with 2 feet because he didn't do it, execute it right the first time, I'm like, he's been doing it this way for 40 years. There's going to be some mistakes in the process.
It takes a little while to change a habit.
If you shame him for trying and not meeting your expectations, the likelihood of doing that again, not going to happen. So I think teachability is a helper. And then if you're not teachable, because sometimes neurotypicals can be rigid too on what I think marriage looks like. And if you're stuck in marriage looks this one way, you're not teachable.
Marriage looks this way. Love looks this way. Showing me that you care looks this way. And that's the only way. Yes. So what you're using, you're summing up what, I refer to capacity, willingness, and motivation. You're kind of summing it up all in one word, being teachable. And I love that. And I do think that it's important for individual partners who are listening to assess not only themselves, am I teachable? A lot of people are like, oh yeah, I'm teachable. But are you? And then a lot of people have partners who are not teachable. And then it's important to look at, okay, now what? If we're in a relationship where only one of us is teachable and the other one's not. And then I have a whole other podcast series on navigating that with Mona Kay from the spring of this year, 2024. So go back and listen to that if you're at that point. But okay, so all of that is I think so helpful and relevant to everybody listening. And so thank you both for sharing so much about your own personal stories and perspective and in your relationship. So talk to us about the book now. Let's hear about it.
So kind of on the market, what I was seeing was just a lot of personal stories, like I love Dave Finch, right? So the best practices, and he kind of writes about his way and how he kind of came about it, or maybe another couple wrote about their specific marriage and how they recognized this or did that. And maybe a clinician, wrote a book on kind of what they're seeing in their practice. And I think were helpful, but I wasn't seeing anything that really talked about what research is showing on a bigger space. And so what I think makes our book unique is it's got a threefold thing. One is the first section of the book is research. What did we find in the 300 people that we surveyed about what autistic people find is connecting, what neurotypical people find is connecting, what brings satisfaction for each person, where can they collide, where can they build, and then I did interview women on the spectrum. So I know there's way more types of neurodiverse relationships. The book is already 379 pages, but we did talk about like a neurodivergent man to a neurotypical woman, a neurodivergent woman to a neurotypical man. And then there's some nuances when both are on the spectrum. It's been believed that if both person were neurodivergent, that makes it easier. And actually, that's not what we found in our research, because if they have different sensory profiles, that is a huge problem, because that's the problem to solve, not their different, not their same neurotype. So the first section of the book I say is the research. We kind of add in then our personal story, but our personal story is not the crux of the book. We wrote another book as a family that's our personal story. We talked about maybe how we applied, maybe 5 pages in and of the chapters are like our personal story. The second section of the book is like, what can change? What can change with neuroplasticity? What can change with boundaries, social communication, executive function, accommodations? And we invited people who were experts in that space, an SLP, someone who works with executive function, to write that particular chapter on social language primatics and why that creates difficulties. Here are some tips. Here's some practical solutions. Here are some personal stories, to illustrate that. And then section 3 of the book is kind of sad. And this is kind of where we bring in the religious stuff that could be abusive. And it's kind of like, if you don't change things, Tiny Tim, This is Tiny Tim's future. If things remain unchanged, you will end up in divorce. Someone is being abused. Both people could be traumatized. And then people have to make decisions on the next step. And maybe this is not a relationship that's sustainable for one or both parties. And that can be really difficult for people of faith to think about if they have the adultery only mindset. So we do bring in the aspects of different types of abuse: financial, emotional, psychological, spiritual, domestic, all the different types that could be going on. And it's our opinion that unintentional abuse is still abuse. If I did it unintentionally and then you say, hey, this happened, and then I fixed it, but if I keep doing it, despite the fact that you keep telling me that it's hurting you and abusing you, that's abusive to me.
And that conversation's come up a good bit on. I had a video about that really blew up on my YouTube channel, and 100% agree with you there. Unintentional abuse is not abuse until those first few incidents when you just really don't know you're hurting somebody. That's not abuse. But once you've been made aware of it and you've been told, and it's now a pattern, and you are intentionally choosing to continue doing or saying the things that you're doing that someone else is saying you're hurting me, then yes, it's no longer unintentional. It's you're choosing something that someone is telling you is harming them. So I totally agree with you on that. So it sounds like the book really, I love the fact that you included the research and you surveyed other couples. You looked at what has worked, what hasn't, what are some of those ingredients like we're saying. And I do think it is important. There's a whole kind of unfortunately polarizing mindset out there of kind of an us versus them, autistic versus non-autistic. And I actually see some people saying, I would never, I'm only going to stick with my own kind. And it's like, yeah, but even neurotypical relationships have their own set of issues. Autistic also have their own set of issues. And I think it's so damaging to have that polarizing type of mindset, because really we're all just human beings. And what we want to do is, like you said, Dan, is look at the humanity of who we are, the context of who we are, what made us who we are, our genetics, our values, our beliefs, all of it, and then figure out what's causing the difficulties and how do we fix that. And I love that you surveyed people, looked at the research, looked at a lot of the solutions, brought in professionals who are experts in those fields, because the reality is some things we can work on. Like you said, the brain is, you talked about neuroplasticity. My first subspecialty years ago was brain injury. And so, I worked with people who'd had traumatic or acquired brain injury and saw that happen, as the brain healed itself. Now, autism is not an injury, but trauma's, it changes the brain. Autism is a different brain. A traumatized brain is a different brain. An injured brain that's had a blunt force or stroke is a different brain. But the takeaway, though, is that the brain has the capacity to change some things, not all things, but some things. And if we look at it from you said, neurotypicals can be rigid in their thinking. Those who are saying, don't get into a neurodiverse relationship. Don't get into a relationship with someone who's autistic. They'll never change. I ban the word they almost fully in my Facebook group. I'm like, we're not going to refer to a group of people as they, because they are all individual human beings that have a different set of capacity and different set of everything. Okay. So tell everybody how we can, about when your book is in pre-order right now.
Pre-order stage. You can get it through, we're really promoting bookstores that are pre-ordering right now, because the big online company, they're going to do okay. But the bookstores, we're kind of pushing that. So it's available for pre-order on like Target, Books A Million, Barnes and Noble.
Okay.
You can look up the title. If you want like a quick link, you can go to our website, which is www.christianneurodiversemarriage.com. Then there's a tab that says Uniquely Us. You can click on that and say pre-order book here. And then you can pick your favorite if you like Books A Million or Barnes and Noble. And it will be on pre-order until about March. And then I think it's like March 4th. and then they'll start shipping and all of that. And so the reason we're really pushing that is we also want to see the book get into actual book stores. And so if there's online sales through the bookstores, they are more open to put it in a actual bookstore.
They'll pull it in. Yeah. Okay. And we'll certainly include all of that in the show notes as well. All the links that where people can get to the books. So, well, once again, thank you so much, you guys. It's always a pleasure to talk to both of you. I learn from you every time. Any last words of wisdom for our listeners?
So your last statement, I'll conclude with from the beginning, well before I think even I was diagnosed, I viewed our niche, autism, well before the word neurodiversity entered our lexicon, that it really is a microcosm of humanity. The whatever normal is anymore still has its own level of different. We each grew up in a different family. We possibly grew up in different parts of the globe. We're different ages. We had different friends. We like different foods. Different is about humanity, and it's not wrong. It's good. That level of different is good. And what I think we are doing is exposing the value of different using a neurodiversity microscope, because that's an extreme version of different, right? Because it expresses itself in so many different ways. Many times it's expressed in negative ways, right? We've got conflict. But the reality is if you're in whatever normal is and you're not embracing what's different, you're probably missing a lot of the richness in that relationship.
Yeah, no, I love the way you just summarized all of that. Thank you for that, Dan. Stephanie, any last words of wisdom from you?
I think just for both people, if you'll take on a growth mindset, like who Dan and I were when we first got married to who we are almost 30 years into marriage, like we have changed as people, and that is a good thing. And sometimes needs change and wants change. And we both decided to learn skills. We both decided to level up our skills. I think that growth mindset versus a fixed mindset, like it's just, and it can look like to the neurodiverse person, like it's good enough. I don't need to learn new things, but I'm willing to let them learn new things. And so that could be fixed. Especially in our world, a neurotypical woman can get so fixated on what the perfect Christian marriage looks like and can get fixated on what that looks like based on what the top selling books are. And it's like, they did not survey neurodiverse couples in those books. So coming from a fixed mindset and that there's never an arrival, we continue to learn. We continue to go to conferences. We continue to study. We continue to learn each other. There's no we've arrived at a satisfaction place, so we are done. We've decided to be students of each other and students of our brain types and students of relationship and helping other relationships. It's a lifelong commitment. It's not just a one and done. I did what I had to do to get out of Jodi's coaching or Dan's coaching or Stephanie's coaching, so we're good now. It's like, think of your marriage as a developmental milestones. When you hit another snag, it's okay to come back and get new skills because you were once parenting teenagers and now you're empty nesters, and now you're empty nesters to caretaker of a parent, or now you're retired. All of these things require different skill sets. And so if you can get it in your mindset, that's why I like coaching versus therapy. You come in, you learn your skill. It's like double dutch. You jump out, but get back in line. When the next little developmental thing happens in your marriage, you're probably going to need to double dutch and learn again.
Yes, I think that's all very powerful too, that growth mindset. A lot of people say to me, they're 25 years in and they're saying, this is not what I signed up for. It's like, well, yeah, but when you signed up, you didn't have 25 years of life that you've lived and experiences and stuff that's happened. So yeah, and I love what you said about it's, we're never done. It's a constantly evolving thing that we can, as we go. I mean, as developmentally, we go through different stages and different things. And it's good to go back to coaches or read another book or, to learn more. It's about growth and learning. All right. Well, thanks again, guys. And it's always a pleasure.
All right. Thank you.